He appears without warning, no introduction, no ancestry, no backstory, no explanation for who he is or where he came from. He walks into the oldest military conflict recorded in the entire Bible, blesses the most important man in the Old Testament, receives a tithe from him, and then vanishes. And the Bible never tells you what happened to him. No death, no burial, no farewell. He is there, and then he is not. His name appears in Genesis exactly 3 times across 3 verses, Genesis 14:18, 14:19, and 14:20. 3 appearances across 3,000 years of biblical history. 1 in Genesis around 2000 BC. 1 in Psalm 110 around 1000 BC. 1 in Hebrews around AD 67. 1,000 years apart each time, and every time he shows up, the stakes are higher than the time before. That is not an accident. That is architecture. And once you see what the Bible is building with this man, you will never read Genesis, Psalms, or the book of Hebrews the same way again. Genesis 14 is not a quiet chapter. It is a war report. And it is the first war recorded in the Bible. 9 kings total. 4 powerful eastern kings, Chedorlaomer king of Elam, Tidal king of Goyim, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar, have formed an alliance. For 12 years, 5 smaller Canaanite city-states, including Sodom and Gomorrah, have been paying them tribute. In the 13th year, those 5 city-states rebel. In the 14th year, the Eastern Alliance marches west to crush them. They do not just march on Sodom. They sweep through the entire region first. Genesis 14:5-7 records them subduing the Rephaim, the Zuzim, the Emim, the Horites, the Amalekites, and the Amorites before even reaching the valley of Siddim. The valley, according to Genesis 14:10, was full of bitumen pits, tar pits. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah flee. Some fall into the pits. The others escape into the hills. Their cities are looted. Their people are taken captive. And among the captives is a man named Lot, Abraham's nephew. When word reaches Abraham, he is living near the oaks of Mamre. He does not negotiate. He does not wait. He calls out the 318 trained men born in his own household. He divides his forces in the night. He attacks. He routs them. He chases them to Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovers Lot, the other captives, all the possessions, all the people. Abraham, with 318 men, has just defeated the coalition that dismantled a 5-king alliance and swept a corridor of nations. This is the backdrop. This is what has just happened when Melchizedek walks onto the page. Genesis 14:17-20. The battle is over. Abraham is returning from his victory when 2 kings come out to meet him. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High, he brings bread and wine, and he blesses Abraham. Genesis 14:19-20. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abraham gives him 1/10 of everything. That is the entire encounter. 5 verses. No conversation recorded. No explanation offered. His name first. In Hebrew, Melchizedek is Malki-Tzedek. It breaks into 2 parts. Melech, meaning king. Tzedek, meaning righteousness. Then his city. Salem, Hebrew, Shalom. It is the shortened early form of what will become Jerusalem. Psalm 76:2 confirms this directly, identifying Salem with Zion. The Hebrew word shalom shares its root with shalom, peace. So his name means king of righteousness. His city means king of peace. King of righteousness and king of peace. Hebrews 7:2. In that order. Righteousness before peace. That sequence matters. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the result of righteousness established. You cannot have the second without the first. Then his title. Priest of El Elyon. God Most High. This is the first time the title El Elyon appears in the Bible. And here it is on the lips of a Canaanite king-priest who, by every measure of the Genesis narrative, is not an Israelite. Abraham has no children yet. The nation of Israel does not exist. There is no Mosaic law. There is no Levitical priesthood. And yet, here stands a man who is simultaneously king and priest, who worships the same God Abraham worships, and who speaks with the kind of authority that causes Abraham to give him a tenth of everything. Giving a tenth was an act of acknowledgement, of submission, of recognizing that the person receiving it holds a position above you in a hierarchy. Abraham does not debate this. He does not question it. He does not look confused. He gives the tithe immediately, without any recorded hesitation. The most important man in the entire Old Testament recognizes the authority of this figure instantly. Now here is what the author of Genesis does that is almost more remarkable than the encounter itself. He says nothing else about him. In Genesis, when a significant figure appears, the text gives you their lineage, their father's name, their tribe, their genealogy. It is not optional. It is the structure of Genesis. Melchizedek has none, no father named, no mother named, no birth recorded, no death recorded, no tribe, no origin story. This is not a gap in the historical record. This is a deliberate literary choice by a writer who recorded genealogies meticulously. The silence is intentional. The blank space is loaded. The author of Hebrews locks onto this silence and builds an entire argument on it. Hebrews 7:3. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. The author is not making a metaphysical claim that Melchizedek had no biological parents. The author is making a textual argument. In the scriptural record, Melchizedek has no recorded father, no recorded mother, no recorded birth, and no recorded death. His priesthood does not depend on descent. It does not depend on inheritance. It does not have a start date and an end date. In the scriptural record, it simply is. Permanent, unconditioned, uninterrupted. He is made like the Son of God, the text says. Not the other way around. Melchizedek is not the original. He is the preview, and then he disappears for 1,000 years. Around 1000 BC, David sits on the throne of Israel in the very city Melchizedek once ruled. Jerusalem, Salem, is now his capital. David writes Psalm 110, 7 verses, the most quoted psalm in the entire New Testament, quoted or alluded to 27 times, more than any other passage in the entire Hebrew Bible. Verse 1 alone, the Lord says to my Lord, "Sit at my right hand while I make your enemies your footstool," is quoted or referenced at least 24 times in the New Testament. But it is verse 4 that concerns us. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. God the Father, Yahweh, is making an oath, not a suggestion, not a declaration, an oath. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. By the time David writes this, the Levitical priesthood is already centuries established. It is the only legitimate priesthood Israel knows. Aaron is the original high priest. His sons inherit it, their sons after them. Bloodline, tribe, appointment, all locked in by Mosaic law. And here is David, a king, not a priest, from the tribe of Judah, not Levi, writing that the coming Messiah will be a priest. But David does not say the Messiah will be a Levitical priest. He says he will be a priest in the order of Melchizedek, the order that predates Levi, the order that is older than Israel, the order that Abraham himself acknowledged with the tithe. David is writing about someone whose priesthood will not expire, will not pass to a successor, will not be constrained by tribal descent, someone who will hold both offices simultaneously, king and priest. That is what Psalm 110:4 does in the middle of the Old Testament. It is David acknowledging that the entire Levitical priesthood, The system God Himself established is not the destination. It is a signpost pointing to something it could never become. And then Melchizedek disappears again for another 1,000 years. Around AD 67, a letter is written to Jewish Christians, the author of Hebrews. The audience is Jewish believers who understand the Levitical system from the inside. They are being pressured to abandon their faith in Jesus and return to the familiar structures of the Mosaic covenant. The author spends 7 chapters building the case that Jesus is better than angels, better than Moses, better than Joshua, better than the Levitical priesthood. Chapter 7 is where Melchizedek comes back. And the author does something surgical. He takes Genesis 14 and Psalm 110 and he lays them on top of each other. And he shows his readers the structure that was always there. Hebrews 7:1-2. Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High, who met Abraham returning from the battle and blessed him. His name means king of righteousness. His city means king of peace. Verse 3. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, made like the Son of God, he remains a priest continually. The author points out that Abraham, the patriarch of the entire nation, the man from whom every Israelite descends, including every Levitical priest who has ever lived, paid tithes to Melchizedek. The lesser is blessed by the greater. Hebrews 7:7. The one who gives the tithe is acknowledging the authority of the one who receives it. Verses 9 and 10. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Levi, the ancestor of all the Levitical priests, was not born for 3 more generations after this encounter. He did not yet exist as a person, but he was already present in Abraham. The entire Levitical priesthood, before it was ever born, bowed to Melchizedek through the body of Abraham. The Levitical system paid its tithe to this order before it existed. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, Hebrews 7:11 asks, why did David, writing 5 centuries after Moses, speak of a priest in the order of Melchizedek instead of the order of Aaron? David's prophecy in Psalm 110:4 is proof, built into the Old Testament itself, that the Levitical priesthood was never designed to be the final word. Hebrews 7:16. Jesus became a priest not on the basis of a legal requirement concerning bodily descent, but by the power of an indestructible life. An indestructible life. That is the Greek word akatalutos. It means something that cannot be dissolved, cannot be broken apart, cannot be ended by any external force. The Levitical priests were mortal. They served for a season and were replaced by the next generation. Hebrews 7:23. The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. But Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, not because of lineage, not because he inherited the office, because his life is indestructible, because death did not end his priesthood, because the resurrection is the proof. Hebrews 7:24-25. But he holds his priesthood permanently, because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Always lives to make intercession, right now, not as a memory, not as a historical figure whose work is finished. As a living priest, permanently at the right hand of God, interceding. He is able to save to the uttermost. The word for uttermost in the Greek is pantelos. Pan meaning all, telos meaning completion, end, fullness, all the way to the end, complete salvation, nothing partial, nothing left undone. There is a man named Marcus. He is in his 40s. He grew up in the church. He knows the gospel, but lately the faith feels thin, academic, like a system of ideas he agrees with but is not sure reaches him anymore. He prays and wonders if it lands. He sins and wonders if anyone up there actually cares enough to deal with it. He is not an unbeliever. He is a believer who has quietly stopped expecting that the transaction between him and God is anything more than formal. He does not know that there is a high priest. Not a memory of one. Not a theology about one. An actual, living, functioning priest, right now, at this moment, seated at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for him. Hebrews 7:25 is written for Marcus. He is able to save to the uttermost, not partially, not provisionally, to the uttermost. And the ground for that promise is not a system, not a building, not an institution that needs to be maintained by the next generation of priests. It is a person who always lives, whose priesthood is permanent because his life is indestructible. First, the Bible is not a collection of disconnected stories. It is one carefully designed narrative where later writers echo and develop earlier texts with surgical precision. 3 verses in Genesis, 1 verse in Psalms, an entire chapter in Hebrews. All 3 are one argument. When you understand that structure, the Bible does not feel like a library anymore. It feels like a letter with a single author. Second, the Levitical priesthood was always meant to be a shadow of something greater. Hebrews 10:1 calls the law a shadow of the good things to come. Shadows are real. They tell you a shape is there. But you do not try to sit in a shadow when the substance that casts it is standing in front of you. Third, every other priest in history had a beginning and an end. Every human mediator between you and God eventually died, was replaced, and left the work unfinished for the next man to pick up. Hebrews is making the case that Jesus is the priest who does not get replaced, who does not retire, who does not pass the responsibility to a successor. The intercession he began at his resurrection is not interrupted and never will be. The man who has no father, no mother, no genealogy, no beginning of days, no end of life in the Genesis record, the one whose scriptural silence was the loudest thing in the room, was there to show us exactly what a priest looks like when the priesthood does not depend on anything human at all. He was a preview. He was a signpost. He was made like the Son of God, and the Son of God is made like nothing. He simply is a priest forever. If this opens something in you, something you had never seen before in texts you thought you already knew, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Leave a comment, even one word. That is how this reaches people. God bless you.